Here. That little got button come up on your screen. You'll get one more right there. And Mr. Secor and crew, have a good meeting.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Ed.
All right, welcome everybody. This is the, excuse me, Scituate Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee meeting of Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. It is 6:32 p.m. As a result of former Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12th, 2020, which has been extended until March 31st, 2023. We are still able to meet in a remote virtual setting. This meeting will be recorded by Scituate Community Television and can be viewed live on Scituate Community Television Facebook Live. The recorded meeting will be available the following day on Comcast Channel 9 and YouTube Scituate Community Television. I will read our commitment statement. This is a safe, secure space for all people, especially people of color, and for all underrepresented people and communities. This is a space where people can bring up challenges and questions without fear. We will assume best intentions and we will treat one another with politeness and respect at all times. This committee is dedicated to these standards. We want our members and others joining our meetings to feel welcomed and respected. So with that, I will call the meeting to order. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Angela. So I will call the roll. Ms. Risha?
Yes.
Ms. Dre?
Yes.
Ms. Gulata?
Yes.
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
All right, and I am a yes. Okay, so yeah, so just to tackle that, what we talked about before we came on the camera. So Ruth Yassine, if we all are not aware, she is stepping away from the committee, effective, immediately. Although she did send out her her detailed minutes as always. So that does leave a. So now we have two committee slots. One, and I'm not sure more. Essentially, Ruth was a community member, and Lillian was a town employee. So I don't know, is the onus on the select board or Jim Boudreau or us to?
It's not on you. So I know Bob and Lorraine have already sent out something for an employee. Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we did.
We did.
Yeah. And Lorraine, I think also, I let Lorraine know about Ruth's resignation. So she is aware. Lorraine was on vacation last week, so I'm not sure if she has sent out any type of communication. Sometimes when it happens at this juncture, we just wait until the next appointing time, which is typically the June-July timeframe. But always, if there's somebody that wants to come forth, they would come in front of the board and, we would interview them and determine if they're, a great fit for the committee and the charge. So that's kind of where we're at. But if all of you have connections, which you all do, or someone that you may think would be interested, send them to Lorraine so they can fill out an application and come before the board and get a chance to interview them. And I do want to publicly say thank you to Ruth. I did send her a note, but I just wanted to go on record that really grateful for her volunteerism, as I am for everyone's, but sad to see her go. I think she's a very great asset to the committee and really appreciate her volunteering. So I just want to say that on behalf of the board, thank you to her.
Totally agree. Certainly echo those comments. So that does bring up the fact that we are now absent a secretary. So I don't know what the process is for nominating a secretary. Obviously, if someone wants to raise their hand. I did talk to Ruth, and she did say that for people not to be fearful of taking that role, and that they don't necessarily have to go to the exhaustive detail that she does.
True.
So I'm just going to put that out there. You don't have to raise your hand tonight. You can send Angela and myself a note if you want to jump into it. I think clearly what Ruth did was she went back and just watched the recording and probably hit pause 37 times.
That's the beauty of the recording.
It is. Yeah, and we do it in my day job too. So
Yeah.
On some of our projects. So anyways. All right.
So
Before-
Tom, so for purposes of tonight's minutes, should one of us at least just do tonight's now?
That would be beautiful.
All right, I'll just try to type. I'm not a Ruth, but I'll do my best.
Like
here.
I said, she.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and minutes really just have to record, votes, kind of what was discussed. It doesn't have to be to the sentence by sentence, Celia, just, bullet pointing. And the most important thing is if there are any votes taken, that's recorded.
Right. Okay, thank you. All right, so I guess since we are on the minutes topic, Ruth did send out the minutes, I think a couple weeks ago. I didn't notice anything. As always, she captured the proceedings, I think, pretty well. We've got all the future meeting dates in here. A couple of attachments with some of the different things that we discussed. Does anyone have any commentary on the minutes? Okay, I will vote. I will call in order to accept the minutes. Do I have a second on the minutes?
Second.
Thank you, Elena. Okay. Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Ms. Gulata,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes, but I wasn't there, so do I need to abstain?
yes.
I'll
Okay.
abstain.
Ms. Risha,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Okay, great. Okay, excuse me. Let's get into the liaison reports. And then I would anticipate us spending the majority of our time tonight talking about, there's been a lot of good updates, a lot of emails flying around. I think a lot of the teams met and so forth to zero back in, I think per a lot of your direction more on the town departments. So I think we're getting closer on that. I think we got to kind of redouble our efforts and dust off some pretty old notes and so forth. But the stuff that's come through has been great. So Maura, select board, any updates you'd like to share? Any town proceedings and whatnot?
I think the biggest thing is, we do have some open positions on our elected boards this year. So Tony Vignani is not going to be running again, so his seat is open. So
Really?
anybody is interested in pulling papers, we're looking for some great civic-minded folks. Yeah, Tony's been doing it probably, I want to say 18 years.
Yeah, I know it's been a very long time.
Andrew is running again, and then unfortunately we have an open position on the school committee that will be probably going to the ballot, but that's going to be something that's going to be decided between the school committee and the select board. So there hasn't been a determination yet, because either the select board can appoint a replacement, temporary replacement, or it can go to the ballot. So I can't speak on behalf of what the rest of the board members are going to do, but the timing kind of just makes sense just to send it to the ballot. So looking for candidates.
The last time that happened, when Dr. Borkowski was, she was appointed, right?
Yeah, she was appointed because there was a long lag time between the next election cycle. So it's the same situation where the
Yeah.
board decide to either go to an election. Sometimes it can be a special election, or to go to an election to fill. I don't know how much was left on his seat. Honestly, I need to go look. I don't know if it was a year or 2 years. But because there was so much time between another election at that time, the boards just, chose to interview and appoint. And we will go through the same process to decide whether are we going to interview and appoint or go to the ballot. And it just kind of makes sense since it's already February 14th. And I want to say, let's see, town meeting's April 20th. So elections sometime in May. I gotta look it up when it is. It just, I don't think we'd be able to get it done.
May 20th, I think I saw today.
20th, is it? Yeah, April 20th and May 20th. Yeah. So those are the biggest things, always looking for the next generation to step up and run for these offices, because I think the future of Scituate can be in some great hands in the next, next generation that's out there.
Okay.
That's really all. I mean, they're really, again, it's just finishing up budgets. Looked at the school budget last week, as well as vocational school budget. So really just finishing up that budget cycle from the board during our last meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions for Maura? Jamil?
Hello. When and for those who celebrate, happy Valentine's Day. But
I love your pink jacket.
Thank you. It's fun. When are elections for the select board?
May 20th, 2023. So it's townwide. It's all on the same date.
Because there's how many positions are there on the board available? 1, 2?
There are 2 positions up for re-election. Andrew Goodrich is running again. And so somebody would need to oppose Andrew, and then the other seat will be open. So hopefully we'll get some candidates to run for that.
And that's a one-on-one situation, right? Or is it?
Yeah, our elections are, you run for a seat. It's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the greatest number of votes get the positions. If you have to
Okay.
choose, like you either choose to run against Andrew or you choose to run against, somebody else.
Whomever.
Seat. Yeah,
For that open seat, is it just whoever gets the most?
correct. Majority. Yep. Mhm.
Okay. So we get to look forward to a lot of election signs and yards again, right? Yeah,
Hopefully.
great. Yeah,
And that's the select board member.
well, I'll just leave it at that, yeah.
But, I mean, I asked that because that means we probably have the election is a lot of seats opening up on a select board, and then at least one with Mike's resignation on the school committee.
Mhm.
And those are probably around the same time, yeah?
Exactly the same time.
Yeah. So
We only have one election day. Yeah. I think you jumped on just a little bit late, Jamil. So what'll happen with that open seat is the school committee and the select board will jointly decide whether or not to just appoint or go to the ballot. Yeah, because it's a vacancy and that hasn't been decided yet. So, but I would imagine it'll go to the ballot, but I don't know.
Yeah, 'cause I think when Carrie was appointed, it was about a 9-month runway.
Mm-hmm.
And then she decided to run again for the longer term.
Correct. Yeah.
But that was competitive. I think when she went for the appointment, I think there were 8 or 9 different people that put their name in for that.
There are a lot of good candidates out there.
Yeah, no, it was pretty impressive, actually.
Come forward
So,
again. Yeah.
okay. All right. Camille, you've had a lot going on. And I did share, and I CC'd you, Jamil, and I don't expect anybody had a chance to look at it, but I guess I'm going to start with a question. The equity audit that was presented, I think it was last night.
Mhm.
Was that the first time that you and the rest of the administration had seen any of those results?
No, no, we had some.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thought the presentation was good. I mean, seems like they did a good job with the time that they had.
Yeah, I think that when folks have an opportunity to just kind of sit with it for a little bit, once the full report goes out, which would be on Friday, folks have some time again to kind of absorb it. Those have the interest in it, they'll be able to do that, and there'll be some more contents what was shared in the presentation yesterday, and so Tom sent that out to folks here earlier today. So if you haven't seen, you should check it out. I think it's about 20 minutes, something like that, 15 to 20 minutes, that particular portion of the meeting from last night.
Got the tail end of it live last night, and it seemed like a great conversation and Q&A towards the end of the presentation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know Natasha was there in person, I think, right?
Yeah. Reverend Stewart was there.
Reverend.
I heard her name mentioned, but it's hard to see. She was off camera, right?
Yeah, well, she was sitting in the room. I don't think folks could see her on camera.
Okay.
Yeah, you really can only see I think the school board on camera.
Right. Okay. What else, Jamil? I know you always have
Okay.
8 million things going on.
Definitely a couple more things.
Martin Luther King celebration was fantastic.
And thanks for covering that for me the last meeting. So thank you for being there. Thanks, folks, for being there. Appreciate it. It was great. I think it was even better than last year because we had more student voices.
Absolutely.
And the thing was, so many students wanted to be in it this year. So it happened again after it was done this year. Students began to request to be a part of it for next year, and that's what you want. That kind of thing for folks to want to continue to be a part of the memorial and the event, because that all signals all kinds of things. And we talk about love, inclusion, trust, and talk about belonging and things like that. That's folks wanting to see themselves represented and feeling they represent. So that's a good thing. I think it was great. That was the response to it. Unanimously, anyone that has shared anything with me, it was all positive with that too. So I'm glad we were also able to be in person. That was good. There were a couple of firsts. That the symphonic band and the chorus were able to share the stage together in that way was a first, but a great thing. I think there'll be staples on a annual basis for that, so that'll be great. We're looking forward to a time again where they merge and do more things together. So that was good. And it was also, I'll say this on it for that, was that despite the inclement weather, folks responded and came on out, had a great turnout. And I like I said that day, I'll say it again here, the folks that take care of the grounds and the police and some folks in the community that we were on the phone from probably like 7 a.m. to about 8:39, is just trying to figure out, are we going to move forward with it? Or are we going to cancel, kind of thing? And folks are just really on top of. It was a communal effort to make the determination to still move forward, but we had confidence that the roads are going to be safe for people to drive on. Campus was cleared out by like 7:30. They had those folks had already knocked that out. So was the other roads, and that's where Chief Thompson and folks in the community were coming through to help out. Other things. So good. Let's see. To make sure I don't forget about anything. I had a thought while I'm pulling up my notes, is that with this committee, I wonder. I think the answer is no immediately, but I just wonder if, because we have folks coming from Boston into the community on a regular basis, if it was even conceivable that someone from Boston be on the committee, particularly if we continue to have a Zoom situation. I know it's called the Scituate Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So may not be the case, but I just wanted to throw that out there, something to think about.
The charge would have to change, Jamil,
Okay.
because there's very specific charge and outline of who the members are.
Got you.
That it can't, but it probably should. We might want to look at the size of the committee again. Just talking about quorum earlier on. So, but we can take a look at that. But I'd be curious to hear more about what your thoughts are on that.
Okay, well, at some point. All right, we can talk about it. No problem. The last community conversation was a good one. I got to see Mr. Clark in person, and that was a treat for me because I only seen him in a digital space. And so when I walked into the room and we were doing our thing, I looked in his direction. I think I might have did a general hello, but then I did a double take. I think I know who that is. And then it wasn't until we were like up face to face. I said, "That's who you are." And it just made sense to me because hadn't seen folks, and it was the same thing for Celia as well. And Lana, it was like, wow, I'm seeing these people in person, and it was just so different. And they came back. Celia and Lana came back, but Bob was the first. I was like, wow, I guess you are you kind of thing.
I do leave this office on occasion, but it was nice to see the representation at that event from the guys. So that was great to see that.
It was. I thought the conversation was really powerful, strong, content filled, absorbed, and absolutely, if we had more time, I think folks would have spent it. The topic was food insecurity. And there were guests. Jesse had the idea. Jesse Finney from the library had the idea to invite folks from the food pantry to be present and speak. And absolutely, they shared some really good insight on the pantry itself, and food insecurity in Scituate, and gave some helpful information about the state and nationally as well. I don't know if other folks wanted to mention, but I thought it was great. Yeah.
My first one, and I can absolutely feel like the value and the impact that those conversations drive, and just bringing different people from town together in a setting that you probably wouldn't otherwise be in together. I felt like I was meeting a celebrity when I Celia and I were like, we have to say hello before we go home. No, and it was great. And it was funny because I went to a meeting with a local nonprofit the next day, and someone brought up the Scituate food pantry, and I was like, oh, let me tell you all about it. So that was great.
Yeah.
I think what was interesting, Jamil, too, is we talk about bias quite often on these meetings, but I think we don't often talk about the bias that goes into food insecurity and asking for help, and even at schools, at a very young age, how a kid can be made aware, right? And so I think that's what was one of my big takeaways from that conversation.
Yeah, there was the guy, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we talked about, one thing I share was just the opportunity maybe to share information about the food pantry with town employees, because the more we were talking, the more I realized that probably more than any other sort of group of people, it's the town employees who have many interactions with residents on a regular basis that we don't always tap into that. And so it was great because I had a couple of days later, we had a union negotiations with DPW employees, and we began talking about that. I was using that as an example, and they were all excited about it because I was saying, it's like, listen, we'll give you guys a bunch of flyers from the food pantry. They're actually going to people's homes. They're the meter reader, for instance, goes in, and if he sees something that's of concern, he may be able to respond and be able to provide resources to residents in a way that we may not see it as the need as regularly as they do. And he was giving me an example of an elderly woman that he was working with, who had some serious hoarding issues that no one was really aware about until he went to the home. And he was able to kind of identify and hook her up with resources. So anyways, that was another good thing that came out of that. And the response from the DPW crew was great because they were just really receptive. They see the need probably more often than we ever do,
Another thing that is noteworthy is the level of discretion that they employ to protect the privacy of folks that are utilizing the pantry, but at the same time, there's an energy of wanting to make it so. I can't think of another word, so I use it normalized, but it's not a thing. And so ultimately, there's some things that they're trying to employ there. I thought it was great. I won't be surprised if we have them come back again. The next one, and Angela, I'm looking at you on my screen, but you didn't know this. I know you had a conversation with Amy about this happening. Is that there's a potential to have a conversation about Cape Verdean folks in history as connected to Scituate, which will probably be our final installation for this season of the community conversation. And it was no way we could imagine having that and not tapping in with Angela on this. So particularly what this group is doing with regard to the sister city and things like that, just knowing, this is Angela's thing in the back. So I don't know if you have some thoughts on that, if it's something that we tread lightly on or don't do, or you're going to be part of it kind of deal. I think at this point, there is someone who is a historian that I believe Amy knows and might have wanted to connect us with, but again, we immediately were can't say Cape Verde without thinking of it.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think it's a wonderful idea, and I love the the community conversations. We'll discuss it on our Sister City Committee meeting on Thursday. I think we would just need to narrow it down to what the conversation is. I don't think I or anyone can explain the full history in an hour conversation. So what is the topic and what will be discussed? Is it Sister City in general? Then maybe we bring in the other two sister cities, because I was surprised that a lot of people in town don't even know about the Sister City projects. And the other two sister cities, they've been around for a long time. So I think they could use a little more publicity for all ages, because it's not just for things that they do at the senior center that's just for the seniors, it's for everyone in the community. So they're really excited that now that there's 3 sister cities, to do more collaborations together, to share what the sister city projects charges and mission statements are. We will have a float in the St. Patrick's Day parade, to get that out there. So yeah, I spoke to Amy, and I think, it would be nice to have a community discussion. What the specific topic, I think still needs to be, confirmed and discussed.
All right. I think when you meet on Thursday, if you all have a specificity regarding topic that you all feel good about bringing, that probably could be it. But we can, we do better together. So we can have the call. Once you're finished, you can connect with Amy or myself. Or
Sure.
Again, whoever, and we'll try to put together. I mean, it won't be till April, so we got a little bit of time to raise it. All right. Thank you. The next 2 things are, well, one is brand new. So the flyer will probably be sent through Peach Jar tomorrow, but we are introducing a pilot for something we're calling Lit Bedtime Stories. Now, the Lit Bedtime Stories are being produced by parents from the Lit Parental Caregivers Advisory Group. And what this will be is there'll be a Zoom location, whereas every Tuesday in March, starting on the 7th, so the 7th, 14th, 21st, 28th, there will be a parent who will read a bedtime story that's geared towards elementary school students. And it'll be no longer than 15 minutes. And then that will be it. Kind of deal. So the parents reading it, and folks invited to be in PJs and stuff like that. But the parent will read the story, and then folks will do bedtime and stuff like that. We have 4 folks doing the first one, including myself, and we have books that have been approved. We approved them, we liked them, but then we also made sure that our expert from our district, Megan Gregory, checked them out too to make sure they were good. And so they met the standards there as well. So we're good with those books. And we also will have one on the 14th, that will be done in English and Spanish. So we'll pilot this, and if it goes as wonderfully as we hope it goes, we will begin to prepare for the following year. And I already know there are folks in the community that when they learn about it, want to be a part of it. And I think there's some faculty and staff and some students absolutely that want to do it. So we may be able to something awesome that we can tap into. Any feedback on that? Any thoughts on that?
It's a great idea. My kids are aged out, but I'm sure some of the other parents on this not so much. So
7:15, March 7th, first one. Let's see. Then the next thing was just to ask for our MECO program. I think we are in need of maybe an additional person that can work after school hours with just spend time with our Boston students that are after school till the 6 o'clock bus happens. We have one person there now, but I think we could use another person if I'm remembering correctly. So if you know someone in town that may be available and has a gift with connecting with folks, with young kids, young folks, majority middle school kids, at least twice a week, I think would be the ask. Share those folks. You can share with me or with Marcavius Barnes. I know would be great. But if you know somebody,
where is that, Gates?
at Gates, yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Is there like a job description or a role description, Jamil, as to what kind of attributes or you're looking for or what folks would be doing?
Question. I believe Marcavius probably has that. What I can do is ask him to share something and give it to him.
Okay.
I'll text him once. Okay.
Okay.
That was all I had. The next thing I think we're going to talk about at some point, which was where we were with the land acknowledgement.
Oh, with the land acknowledgement, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Word. There hasn't been much done. I'll say that up front. We talked about. So I will recap it a bit, Jamil. So we did get into this for actually quite a while at our last meeting, and frankly, we felt like we, as a committee, and I think we were fairly unanimous with this, but it was good discussion. That we were kind of running out of runway, for lack of a better analogy, to get this ready for town meeting. I think the amount of, and I put everything under the same umbrella, right? So Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day, town seal, land acknowledgement. So all three, and not necessarily in that order, probably land acknowledgement, probably in the middle. Changing the day is what we originally went in front of the select board to talk about. And it's not that there was pushback, it was just good conversation. You were in the room, Jamil, you remember. So it was good conversation. It was education oriented, that was the intent. And, you know, Maura, as I've mentioned, you know, brought great points to the select board in her role as an advocate for us in the topic. But I think the amount of community organizing, frankly, that we would have to do between when that meeting happened and the next time we were able to discuss it as a select board, which was, I think, last month, and then the getting it in the warrant, which we've already missed that deadline, and then the town vote in May. How we would go about that in terms of, could it be, I mean, I don't have all the notes in front of me, but could it be something that was just an ordinance by the select board versus a town vote? And for something that would probably get divisive. And we talked about the Knights of Columbus, we talked about the Catholic Church, and the fact that there would probably be probably some vocal opposition to it. So, I mean, my personal view, and I think it's shared, but my personal view is that I certainly don't want to kick this can down the road forever. I still think it's the absolute right thing to do. But right now, I think there's other things that we're going to shift our focus to. And then we will target an election in the future, whether it be special town election in the September timeframe, and more, I think that's usually when it is, or the spring election in 2024. So it's disappointing, but I think a lot of good work was done, and that will not go to waste. The other
Well,
thing,
and I'll say, I think it was admirable that you all kind of chose that you wanted to, take the time and have good, productive discussions with some of the opposition instead of getting into a room and having it be, to your point, divisive. So I thought that was pretty admirable. That may not have been the route that I took. So I admire that.
we appreciate it. I mean, the other thing that is not, I don't think it's dead, is the state movement, right? So, and I don't know where that stands outside of they did restart the petition to get it back on the docket for the state. Obviously new administration and so forth. I don't know where this stands from a priority standpoint, but the Massachusetts Organization for Indigenous Peoples, they're not letting this die, which is great. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you for telling me, and appreciate that.
All right, let's shift gears and talk a bit about some of the town department stuff. Actually, before we do that, and I don't want to go too far over. I know we went pretty far over last time, and I apologize. There's been quite a bit of work being done. I'm actually going to tap Elena to talk about equitable communications. There's been a lot of emails flying around. Bob has unearthed some great information. So there's a lot of different things in the works. Elena, you want to shepherd that?
Yeah, sure. I was just pulling up the email I sent to you all yesterday so I can reference it for some notes. And Bob, please feel free to kind of chime in. It's been very much dual.
Elena, you want me to share it?
Oh no, it's okay. I got it.
Okay.
And if it's helpful, I can forward. I don't know what I'm allowed to do sometimes, so I'm happy to forward this to everyone. But basically 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, Bob and I met with Mike, I believe the director of IT for Scituate. So he kind of runs the town of Scituate website. I'm sure he does a lot more than that, but one of his remits is the town of Scituate website, just to learn a little bit more about what our options are in terms of the translation tool that we all know is now live on the website and was launched over the summer. So within the website, one of our questions was, how could we make that more visible, right? Right now it's at the footer or in the footer of the website. To move it to the top of the website, which is where it is on some other town websites, it would require a kind of a completely new template for the website. So I guess the town of Scituate's website is hosted on a bit of an older version of Civic Plus, I believe is the provider. And to upgrade, if you will, to the newer template would be there's a cost involved in that. And I think that he has put together maybe some ideas or proposals, but not at the moment seems to be a priority. So Bob and I were trying to get a little creative, and if we can't move it up to the top of the page, what else could we do? On the top of the website, the town website, there is this like how do I button. It's like top right. You can potentially, we could add to there, translate, that would then link out to a web page with instructions on that, just kind of sharing that this is there, this is at the bottom of the web page, this is how you can use it. If there's like a saved PDF on the town website, this is how you can actually copy it over and translate it. We could have a little bit of a how-to instruction guide, if you will. That seems to be an option. In addition, on the homepage, there is that red COVID-19 banner that still exists, and I think there's been discussions at the town within the staff and team about replacing that banner with something else. So could we use that real estate? It seems like that real estate would be highly sought after by various town departments and committees, so that's definitely not a guarantee, but just another option. So that's about the website. Bob, did I capture that, or any questions?
No, perfect. No, great.
So the other kind of part of the project we discussed is how do we continue to promote that you can translate information on the website at any point in time, right? It was announced in the town update, one town update in July, which was great, but could we maybe send out an annual reminder to the team, I'm not at my day job anymore, to the town. And if we sent out a reminder via email, that would live in the news section on the homepage, right? So it would kind of get that a little bit more real estate for even a longer period of time. It could also link to the how-to article within that reminder. So, we could ask the town to do that on an annual basis. And then the last piece that actually was completely Bob's idea was looking at we've talked about town mailers. He extended it to town bills. So could we add, boilerplate language to mailers, specifically around public health alerts? I keep referencing the water mailer that we all got over the summer. That's what started this conversation, but also bills, tax forms, water bills, etc. I think on the back of the bills, there's quite a bit of empty real estate that we could put in, in a couple languages. Bob, I think, met with the assessor and he seemed quite open to that, right? Because it's empty paper space anyway. We're printing out the paper. I think we would want to understand which languages would be the most impactful. And then, we would have to have that language more professionally translated outside of just Google Translate. Now I will pass it over to Bob because there's a flurry of emails that we exchanged today. That is kind of a summary of where the project stood up until 12 hours ago.
So, no, that's perfect. That's, I think you captured well sort of what our discussion was. And so the other thing that we talked about is just trying to get a better handle on like what are the other languages we really should be focused on. And the one thought that had been put out there is talking to the school department. And so I had a couple of emails with some folks over there. Anne-Marie Galvin had given me a lead, and I ended up talking to Kate, and I'm going to probably get her last name incorrect, but it's Sayula, something like that. And she is the World Language Department Chair for the Scituate Public Schools. And what she told me is that what they do is they send out mailers for every year that basically asks students it's a home language survey. So what are the languages spoken at home? And she said that typically about 12 students per grade level actually have a language other than English spoken at home, which was interesting. So that's a significant, that's whatever, that 12 grades, I guess, is 144 different students. But she said that could actually be, it doesn't necessarily mean that English isn't that first language. It's just that there's that many. And so Tom just shared this. One thing that she sent to us is the number of students who have in their home these languages other than English that are spoken. And I think this confirms some of what we believe. You see Cape Verdean Creole is one. Portuguese as well is relatively common. Those are the two top kind of languages spoken at home. Also a fair amount of Spanish and French was the other one she mentioned. So I asked her what the school department does, because they do mailings at times, and that they do a fair amount of translation as well. And she said typically what they do is the 3 languages that they choose are Portuguese, Spanish, and then surprisingly Mandarin Chinese. She says they'll often do. She said as a 4th, if we wanted to, perhaps French. So, I think that was the one thing that we really struggled with, is what are the languages we want to focus on. And so I think that, again, it's just the school department, but I think it's potentially somewhat reflective of our community. We already have a vendor called Bay State Online Translations that could probably do things like translating those bills. We would just, the back of the bills would give you instructions on how to fill out a bill. If we could have those in 2 or 3 other additional languages, I think that goes a long way to making sure that, that all our residents are, kind of whatever, they're informed of what's expected of them. So the other thing she said is that the results from these home language surveys, they're put into a database, and she believes that there may be additional information we may be able to obtain. So I'm going to reach out to the IT person over at the school department and see if he can maybe, see what's in there, see if he can send us some data. Again, it's all about like sort of gathering more information so we can kind of make some educated decisions on where we're going with all this.
Such
Bob,
great.
can I ask a question? Did you say the town has a vendor that does translation services or translation? Okay.
Yep.
That's great, because that would be something we would have to look into. So it's almost like kind of takes that work off.
Yeah,
In a
absolutely.
way. Such great information, Bob, that you collect. Like, thank you.
Sure.
So much. I feel like
the translation service is relatively expensive, so I think we want to be judicious in how we do this. But particularly the more pertinent, important information in the things that we're regularly sending out. Again, like the back of a tax bill. I mean, that could live forever. Once we make that translation. So.
And I think something we talked about is with the written notices, I don't think they're often sent out for like public health alerts. I think those are more sent out via email, and then they're directed back to the town website. So it could be also adding a quick boilerplate in those alerts where you can, no, don't ask me to write it, but you can read this in your preferred language if you go to the town website, because once they click on the website, it'll be in their preferred language. Mm-hmm. So it's like the ask would not be to translate every single alert into the languages that we decide. It would just kind of create like this boilerplate language that can be added to alerts, just continuously pointing them back to the website, back to the website, back to the website. Outside of the bills, of course, that would be a little bit different.
So in terms of the information that's on the website, a fair amount of it is actually PDFs. I mean, like for instance, even when we do our minutes, we'll put it in a PDF and then we download it onto our page on the website. And so that is not necessarily translatable. The page isn't translatable through Google Translate, but there are ways that we can help guide someone through that process. So that's the other thing we talked about doing. Elena sort of spoke to that, but actually having steps within the website in their preferred language, explaining to them how you go about translating a PDF. One of the things though that has to happen is that PDF, like if we do minutes and then convert it to a PDF to be uploaded onto the website, it needs to be converted from Word as opposed to scanned as a PDF. If it's a scanned PDF, it's not going to work. So that's the other thing is I think we want to make sure we get the message out to all the different committee members that when you're doing minutes, you got it. This is a process you should follow by converting from Word as opposed to just scanning something. So.
From Word or Google Docs or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's just like a scanned PDF is just not going to work. No translation service is going to be able to translate that,
Yep. Okay. Makes sense. No, that's great.
I had one other maybe thought. So I think Bob, like using the school school's information about languages spoken at home is, I think, sets a great foundation for us to maybe understand what languages we should prioritize, but obviously not every resident in town has children, so it wouldn't be captured, right? Is there, I don't know, within the senior center or with like, you know, is there any way to capture that? Like, would they know a little bit? Like if we said, hey, we were thinking about these 4 languages, would they be like, yeah, I think that would probably cover that other section of town that's obviously not represented within the school board, like within the school system?
I mean, I think we can, I can have a conversation with the Council on Aging Director, Linda Hayes, and see what she knows. I mean, I did have a conversation a while ago about this with her, and just to ask whether or not she was seeing kind of issues there, or just and off the top of her head, she didn't. You know, I'm wondering if the outreach worker may. The other thing is, I think it's possible that people, if they're not, you know, primarily English speaking, they may be more reserved and more reluctant to actually show up at the same.
Yeah, right.
Like
Right.
it becomes a, yeah.
No, of course. I was thinking, how do we like touch that community in a sense?
No, but I think it makes sense, and I think, so I can follow up with the conversation with Linda.
Okay.
And in the library too, I mean, Jessie is great, and I'm just wondering if she has some, you know, additional, even anecdotal information on like,
Right.
population.
I mean, I think having these 4 languages as a starting point, it's now kind of like, lack of better words, like gut checking them with like other people in town or buildings in town or staff in town that are interacting with a lot of our residents and seeing like, oh, are these the 4 that would be the most impactful, without having really, like, we don't have census data, like this is not collected in the census, so we don't really have data across all residents in town to go off of. So yeah.
And I also had found some information from it's called, oh, I wrote it down here, but it's the Department of Transportation actually does some gathering of census information, and we have access to that site. So I'm going to see what I can pull from that as well. That was interesting because, and from what I saw from there, they also said, Portuguese, Spanish, and then French was actually relatively common too. So I'm going to dive into that and see maybe if we can pull some more information. That'd be helpful.
Awesome.
Okay. Maura, were you gonna say something?
No, I just said good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're underselling it. I mean, Bob sent these other websites and stuff that there's so much data out there that, and I you know, some of it is, and this dovetails a little bit with, and I'll just go into some of the discussions that Natasha, Kate, and myself, and Bob have had about Board of Health, facts, social services, vets, right? So we were going back through our notes, and you know, there were, I think, different discussions that we had with different people around town. You know, we always hear Anne Marie's name. I had a long conversation with Anne Marie and talked about different things, and she's always got a million ideas, which is great. And so we met and we talked about it, and I sent out those notes to everybody, and and I think what I didn't write in a lot of the discussions that we had was that there's a lot of really great services in town that a lot of people probably just don't know about, right? And so in this is, I guess, is a good segue coming from, there's equitable communications, which is what we're talking about with everything that Elaine and Bob just spoke about, but there's also just communications, which and that impacts the whole town, whether it's the aging population, the vets, you know, people with substance disorders, a lot of what, in Board of Health, obviously, a lot of what Erica Soares has to deal with from a social services standpoint as a one person show. So, you know, some of that discussion was around, and there was, you know, some other emails where Bob dug out that there are 4,571 residents / households, which are town email subscribers, which I think that's a pretty good number. I'm sure it's not perfect. It wouldn't be in any town, but, and, you know, I go to Wikipedia, and Bob actually goes to an actual website that has actual information. So I just, you know, that's the limit of my Googling skills, I guess. But so, I mean, there's, I don't know the exact number of households in Scituate. It's probably closer to 7,000. I don't know, ish. So I think one of the things that, and then I also don't know, you know, the town email subscriber number is 4,571. But how deep do they go as subscribers? Because if you've done it right, there's a bunch of different things you can check, right? So, I mean, does everybody get, when there's a water main break, does everybody get those emails?
Yeah,
Okay.
you have to choose what you sign up for. So you choose
Right.
either townwide or specific, just specific departmental updates. But I think, you know, you're onto something. I think there's a great way to share a townwide email, like a did you know, right? You know, and it could even come from the DEI committee as one, you know, a nice initiative from all of you, you know, an update. Did you know these services were, you know, whatever, all those things that you want to get out there that you feel people aren't aware of, right? Be a nice way to do that.
Right. So where we arrived, and I'm not saying that it's done and dusted, but we were coming back to, and again, this was Kate and Bob and Reverend Stewart and myself, with regards to Board of Health, PAC, social services, the desire for a needs assessment within our community with the DEI lens. How could that be done? There's different ideas, you know, surveys, listening tours, keep me honest, Kate and Bob, you know, meetings. But then the question becomes, you know, who runs those meetings? That's not really in our charge, or is it? But so how would we put something like that together? Or do we just, when we do get back in front of the select board with a recommendation, I mean, we'll tighten it up, but we could, you know, recommend, can we perform a needs assessment for the town in terms of these specific town departments, and, you know, increasing communications, increasing awareness, because I mean, my own lived experience, I'm not impacted by any of this stuff personally, right? But there's people in the town that are. So how do we get to those people to understand
What they need
better where they are? Yeah.
I'm sure there are grants out there too. I mean, I think that's something that we could partner with. I mean, I know our social service department is really overburdened, but she or, you know, Anne Marie, they both, you know, Eric and Anne Marie have great resources, and I'm sure there are grants out there that can help us find a facilitator to help do that survey. I would think it'd be more survey based, because I wonder, when you do a needs assessment, are people really going to come forth? I would imagine, and I'm guessing, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I'm sort of thinking that they'd be more inclined to fill out a survey so we could collect the data and understand and address our services that way. I mean, I can look into that. You want me to take that?
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I can also talk to Anne Marie. I mean, she's offered several times to, I mean, she knows how to write grants probably better than anybody in town. And I think, well, she had told me, and then Bob, you know, affirmed it, that there's already been, there was a $100,000 social services grant that's shared across Scituate, Hingham, and Cohasset for some social services assistance for Erica. Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's, I mean, they hired a public health nurse with it, and that's just one of the things that we want to do, is actually advocate for the hiring of a case manager for Erica, because you know, like you guys said, she's just flat out and she's ending up doing more sort of technical administrative work that she could probably use some help to do. So, so with, you know, because she actually has a strong interest in doing a lot of these sort of community-wide, you know, initiatives and trainings, and that's kind of has always been sort of her focus. But she just right now is just doesn't have anything close to the capacity to do that. So,
right. Which is, I think, what Hingham did. Hingham has, well, I think it's more public safety focused, but Hingham hired a full-time social worker that sits, I believe, in their police department.
right.
So Bob, is it 100,000 per town or 100,000 shared?
Shared. It's administered through Cohasset, I believe. So it's from the Department of Public Health. And so they're using it for data collection as well, but that's just more like client-driven data collection. So it's ultimately, it only goes so far. So
Okay. All right, some good thoughts there. Let's keep going just in the interest of time. Celia, I did not get a chance to read through all the DPW stuff. Do you want to take us through?
Sure. Up to you. Do you want me to do it now, Tom, or save it? I know Bob hasn't had a chance to look at it, so I do want to. Do you want me to go?
I'm happy waiting for next month. I mean,
yeah, let's maybe wait on that though, but I do want to share just at least one of the takeaways because it is related to the conversation we're having about communications. And I actually love Maura's idea about like the did you know emails or series, because I think a lot of what came out of the DPW conversation is they're doing a lot of great work that actually fits within an equity framework, like prioritizing sidewalks for access for different types of people, for example. Like, how do we share those great initiatives with that framing with the town? Because I think so much of folks wanting to move here, live here is not just the perception, but the reality. So how can we share out those little wins, I'd call them, around DEI that the town's already doing? And I think it encourages town to departments when they get those kudos to do even more of it. So I don't know, I think it's positive reinforcement. And I just want to highlight that around the communications piece, because they in particular, I thought were, most of my takeaways were like, oh, let's highlight this about what DPW is doing. Because I think Kevin in particular has that framework already in mind. And I thought our conversation with him was great. So that's the one thing. I don't know, Bob, if you want to add to that.
yeah, no, I mean, I think because there was one of our questions is when we talk about equity of service is, you know, how do they make determinations on what streets are being paved? How do the plow routes happen? I mean, do we only plow the sections that you know all the affluent politicians live in, and that's, you know, like it used to happen in Boston years ago, but that's just not the case. And he has a really, I think, good, objective, fair system. And so part of our takeaway was like we should be communicating that to residents so they understand, because, you know, so they may be making other assumptions. And so, but it's, you're right, Sarah, it gets right back to the same issue of like, how are we able to effectively communicate to all residents, particularly the people who may not necessarily be, you know, naturally engaged with us already, you know?
Yep.
And so it's all part of the same sort of dilemma.
Been a long time. It's been a dilemma.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think the rest of it, Tom, we can hold until next meeting while everybody reviews it, because I set the deadline and then I missed it, so I apologize to Bob in particular.
that's all right. Deadlines are good. We missed it too, but at least we got it done. It lit a fire under us, so it was good. I think the last thing I'll mention, at least the last thing on my list, I think the last thing I'll mention is Elena put together a pretty basic deck that I would say, Elena, just send it to the committee and, you know, we can look at it. But the idea being, all right, so I think we're tossing out a lot of good ideas right now that I think are going to rise to recommendations that we're going to make to the select board, and some of the things that we may be able to just do anyways through Bob and his department. But let's I think it's time. I personally, I've heard so many good things tonight. Let's start getting it into the deck, right? And then we'll kick it around with our little teams here, and hopefully by next meeting, I think we'll be able to get these things tightened up, and then with the goal of asking Maura for a slot in an upcoming select board meeting.
Good.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add really quickly. It's very basic, perfect word. But in our last meeting, I wasn't involved in a lot of these like deep dive conversations as they occurred before I joined the committee. So I was trying to really think about how I could add any value to these. And so what I heard in the last meeting is just like kind of a gap in how we pull this all together into something that we can then actually deliver to the select board in a way that's organized, right? And so literally the template is, I'm just going to share my screen if it's okay, because maybe if anyone has questions, it's easier to talk about it live rather than, and I think this is the one that you edited, Tom. Yeah. So, right, I just used the last presentation template, and then you have the first slide is cross-town department findings. So these are the findings that were consistent across the 3 downtown departments that our committee conducted deep dive sessions with. In our last meeting, I feel like we talked a little bit about like, how do we really highlight how there's things that are really, they're happening with the police department, they're in need of the public works, they're in need of social service. Like this is where we can kind of like tie that all together. And then each slide you kind of dive into like, what were the key takeaways, what were the highlights, and what are opportunities for further work. And these can obviously be changed like completely, but just as a way to kind of help organize our notes. And I use the Scituate, the police department notes, I think from Ruth and Angela, I believe, as a way, like I could take those notes and do this myself, right? So that's kind of what inspired this format. And I'm happy to do that. If everyone sends notes, I'm happy to take this first stab at this, because I know sometimes it can be hard when you're like in it to then bring yourself back out and like pull out the relevant pieces. So if this is helpful, great. And if it's not, it's fine. As I said to Tom, if it's a bad idea, just keep ignoring me. But if it's helpful, then it maybe at least gives us a framework to then present to the select board. So that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I always say no pride in authorship, right? So you just start dumping stuff in there, and then we'll make it pretty later.
Yeah. So I'll send it along to everyone.
Thank you. All right. We didn't go over by too much. Does anybody have anything else that they want to bring up at this point? I realize we could go for another hour, but then we get more resignations, and I don't want that.
Tom, I just said one thing.
Yes, Angela.
The Scituate Visitor Center is having their second roundtable leadership meeting on February 21st. You should have gotten the email, Tom, I think. If not, I can forward this to everyone. It's open to any committee member in town. So the next meeting is February 21st, 6:30 at the Senior Center.
Yeah, if you could send that to me. I thought I got it, but I don't see it in my calendar. And I should be able to go. It is school vacation week next week, but I think I'm going to be home on Tuesday. So, all right, thank you. All right, anything else from anybody? We've got all the future meeting dates in here. Hopefully they're good. If we have to move them around, we can. Well, I know. Hopefully we don't. It's a real pain in the neck when we do. But okay, I am going to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the roll. Ms. Dre,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Gulata,
Yes.
Ms. Risha,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So it is 7:41 and the meeting is adjourned.